recording people without their consent in California usually requires two-party consent, unless it's in, a public place where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. So when I researched this, that's I was thinking more about just like a recording device, not something that you could, trigger remotely or anything, but just you'd turn the thing on, it would go to school, it would be running all day, and then you'd come home. Now, I mean, it's interesting just to think about how different the behavior is of people when you audio record an IEP.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's better for the case, sometimes it's worse. Because sometimes they sort of clean up and, they don't really show their true colors. But on the other hand, sometimes they don't clean up, and then when the meeting is over, you're so glad you had the recording. So I did some looking around to address the question, and because I think it's a interesting topic, I summarized some things that I wanted to tell people about, things that had happened. So in 2010, there was a case in Ocala, Florida, and I'm not clear that case is not still going on now. The claim was that the teacher and an aide were mocking an autistic first grader, and I wish I'd never for a second believed that this was possible, but I've seen it with my own eyes because I have one client that had a nanny camera in her child's bedroom, and it picked up a lot of stuff. So this was in the classroom. The mom recorded it. The question was, is the classroom a public place or not? Because if it's a public place and there's no reasonable expectation of privacy, then the answer might be different. The prosecutors in Florida said it was a gray area, which meant that they were involved in this because somebody had asked them to prosecute the mom. The child in question was 7. The child had a recorder in his or her backpack. The recording captured such things as the classroom staff calling the child a hippo in a ballerina suit, calling the child a beached whale, allowing the child to sleep in class, making fun of the child for wetting herself, making her wear soiled clothing. So the mom shared the recording at an IEP, and the teacher was placed on paid administrative leave and fired. But the aide was fired. The teacher, who was a teacher of 20 years standing, got a hearing. And that's how all this got litigated. And so Florida has a two-party consent for any wire, oral, or electric communication unless there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. And so then, you had people arguing that the classroom was not a private place for the teacher, and so on. Sorry about sprinkling pages, Shannon.
But correct me, I'm looking at, because you had sent me some stuff, Bonnie, and in the California Penal Code, if you're caught doing this, if you are, so if a mom...
We're headed toward California Penal Code.
Okay, I'll let you get there.
Only because it's interesting to see what happens in other states.
Okay.
So the Florida attorney said, we'd have to prove that there was psychological damage done to the child beyond just being mean. That would be hard to prove because the child is nonverbal. And then said it's unfair to prosecute mom if teachers weren't prosecuted. So that was that one. There was a Daily Breeze article in 2013. A teacher was heckled by a student, and the teacher responded with a profanity tirade. This is apparently an LAUSD teacher. The tirade was recorded. The Daily Breeze article said the answer is complicated because California Education Code 5152 makes it illegal to record without the consent of the teacher. But that supposedly really only applied to non-students. I'm not sure why. And then the article goes on to say if a student surreptitiously records a teacher, the school decides on the punishment because, quote, the student might be doing it with a good purpose. as this student did. So LAUSD apparently has a policy of no phones on in class, which is interesting because we have a case where a student got his leg broken in class and another kid started running his phone. And so there's a recording of it. But California is only one of 12 states that requires that you have two-party consent. So in other words, it's not enough. You have to actually get the permission of the teacher if you're going to record in class. And if the recording is obtained under circumstances that are an invasion of privacy, Penal Code 632 in California makes the recording inadmissible. The problem you're seeing is that courts in some respects have a hard time ignoring recorded child abuse. And so they're struggling with the fact that the parent has had the student record without permission, and yet when you do record, you pick up, bad stuff. So I had one more thing, Shannon, that was really interesting that came in via CAPCA law, which was an attorney saying that her client, the mom, recorded without permission in class. And what came home was 5 hours of the students listening to Barney TV programs or, whatever. And occasionally the recordings would shut off and the teacher would instruct the kids to do things and then they'd come back on. At the due process hearing, the teacher was asked, do you ever play Barney cartoons in your classroom? And she said, absolutely not. That never happened. And it sort of went from there. So the point about this, unfortunately, is that bad stuff happens in classrooms, and because parents aren't there, they don't have a way to address those things. And so it becomes a problem. It's dangerous for people. They can be prosecuted with a felony. On one hand, you have the teacher potentially being abusive to the student, and that's illegal. But on the other hand, you have the parent engaging in something that is potentially a felony, punishable with jail time. So the answer is, I guess that's not really the way we're going to get our answers because it's too dangerous in California. If you ask for permission to record, it's very unlikely that it will be given. You'll be told that it invades the other student's privacy. You'd have to have consent of each parent, and so on. But I'm a firm believer in the fact that this stuff goes on. We know it does. And
yes.
It's
more and more parents are successfully petitioning schools for the schools to have security cameras. We were just talking about the case. Yes.
And that's a very good idea. There's no downside to that I see.
Yeah. We were just talking yesterday about the case over the weekend that in May, two kindergarten teachers dragged a kindergartner. And at one point, they dragged him by his foot so that he was being dragged on his face. And the school cameras caught it. And to my shock, but my, respect to the police, they let the parent see the video that they confiscated in regards to it, which I think that's extraordinary. I don't know many times that would happen. Mm-hmm. But
well, there are people too, and they may have been horrified. I want to say one other thing about this, though, that doesn't always get said, but I think it's true. When you have particularly like a classroom aide or a newly hired behavior therapist, I was involved in one case that obviously was not a card case, but they picked up the behavior therapist roughing up the kid on the nanny cam. What you're really seeing is that in the case, at least of the less trained personnel, nobody's giving them the training that they need to work with the disability. And when people don't have adequate training or tools in their toolkit, one human reaction, which we're not trying to justify, but I think it's actually just correct, and so it should be mentioned, is to get angry or frustrated. And so, part of the problem is people have too many things, like teachers have too many responsibilities to do. They don't have enough support. the classroom isn't really state of the art in terms of teaching. I mean, I can think of a million reasons why it's sort of amazing that teachers don't lose it more often, and yet when they do, it's a really dangerous situation for everybody.